Perfect. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I like this. I didn't know. Hey. Okay, good. You?
I'm good.
Good.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that.
If he was on the phone, like screaming. That's not fun.
Someday I'll do this.
Anybody heard from Councilmember Kelly? No? Okay. So we'll just get going then. Can we start off with an introduction from our interpreter, please?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrea. I'm here with the Community Language Cooperative. We're going to practice language justice. We're going to have simultaneous interpretation in English and in Spanish so that everybody can hear and speak in the language of their heart. Once we turn on the interpretation, if you're on Zoom, please go to the globe that is going to come up at the bottom of your screen and select your preferred language. Y hola a todos, mi nombre es Andrea, estoy aquí con la Community Language Cooperative. Vamos a practicar la justicia del lenguaje y vamos a tener interpretación simultánea en inglés y en español para que podamos comunicarnos en el idioma de nuestro corazón. Una vez que aprendamos la interpretación, si estás en Zoom, ve al globo que va a aparecer en la parte inferior de tu pantalla y selecciona tu idioma preferido. So we can start interpretation now.
Andrea. All right, I'll call to order this meeting, work session for the Sheridan City Council for April 28th, 2025. The time's 6:03 p.m. We have all council members present except for Councilmember Kelly. Tonight, we're talking about a proposed COP issuance. We have Bruce Kimball, sorry, as our first one. Do you want to do an intro or?
Yeah, actually, Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa Adler.
Okay, awesome.
Teresa's online. I'm going to let her kind of intro us into this.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for letting me be online tonight. Was traveling and so just got back about an hour ago. So thank you for letting me be remote tonight. We got a lot to talk about. Last year when we adopted our budget, we had put in there approximately $8 million worth of energy efficient savings that we thought we were going to do. And with the budget, we had proposed that the city would fund 3 million and then finance 5 million. Well, as you remember last week or last meeting, ESG talked about how the costs have come down significantly. So it's a lot smaller project and a lot smaller issuance, which changed a little bit of how we were going to do this issuance. And so I have been working with Bruce Kimmel. He is our municipal advisor. He's with Ellers. And I've also been working with Ashley Dennis. She is our bond attorney with QTAC Rock. And Bruce is going to start us off. He's going to do kind of an overview of the COP issuance. And then Ashley's going to get into the meat and potatoes of all the documents that you got in your packet tonight. So Bruce, take it away.
And hold on, I'm sorry, Bruce, before you get started, let me
Yes.
just, I know that council received an email from Roger Rowland. And if you had a chance to look at that, Roger brings up some good questions. We're going to address all that, but let's get through this first, and then we can have an opportunity to talk about the points that Roger brought up. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Go ahead. Thanks, Bruce.
Great. Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Teresa and Devin. It's great to be with you tonight. This is my first time in front of your city council, and I'm really excited to be working with you and also with Ashley Dennis with QTech. So we look forward to having a good conversation and to answering all of your questions. As you know, also, this is your first reading of the COP ordinance tonight. There'll be another reading in the early part of next month. And then we're looking to do the actual financing in late May if you choose to move forward with this financing vehicle. So I'm just going to hit a few of the high points from my memo. I tried to keep things pretty succinct here in this one pager. But as Teresa alluded to, the costs of this project have come in much less than originally anticipated. You're looking at a total cost of about $4.3 million. And you anticipate that about $1 million of that will be ultimately covered through a combination of grants and rebates from the state and federal government, and then from the utility provider as well. But those costs will be funded by the city upfront, and then you'll be reimbursed for that $1 million over, within the parameters or the requirements of those specific programs. So the net cost to the city is really $3.3 million, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight in terms of doing these proposed COP issuance or certificates of participation. I think you might have some familiarity with COPs, at least some of you do, but essentially this is a form of lease purchase financing, or you might call it rent to own, essentially, where instead of issuing a bond, where with a bond, it's a debt obligation, here you are leasing the improvements, in this case, the energy improvements from the investors, essentially. And Ashley can correct all the technical details that I'll get wrong. But it's very common in Colorado to use this COP mechanism in lieu of a bond issue because of some of the requirements under Tabor for taking on debt. It's easier and more practical to do COPs in a lot of cases like this. And so a couple of key similarities and differences. COPs are often structured just like a bond issue in terms of having semi-annual interest payments and annual principal payments on the lease agreement. But where they're different is that this is subject to annual appropriation. So with a GO bond, general obligation bond, and I know you've issued some of those in the past, you're pledging your full faith and credit to the bondholder, saying you will do whatever it takes to make all of the bond payments on time and in full. And that's like the highest security pledge you can have, a general obligation. COPs are a little bit different in that you telegraph, yes, we fully intend to make all of these lease payments over the term of the COPs, but you have a key opt-out provision called annual appropriation, in which you decide every year essentially whether to appropriate to make the payments on the next year's payments on the COPs. And in this way, this does not conflict with Tabor because it's not a multi-year financial obligation. You're actually deciding each year, if you will, whether to make those payments. Now, we would fully expect you would make those payments. I think you would fully expect you would make those payments, but you can't get rid of that right of non-appropriation. That's very, very important to understand that that's just a provision of COP is having that option of not appropriating. And so as a result of that, if you're looking at it then from the bond holders or the COP holders perspective, they might say, well, gee, we know you're making these improvements, these energy improvements. They're really kind of core infrastructure for the city, but we really would like some kind of collateral or assurance just to back up this investment we're making, in the absence of a general obligation pledge. And so that's why almost all COPs do have some sort of collateral that is pledged as part of the transaction, in that you would forego or give up to the investors in the event, however unlikely that it might be, of non-appropriation. And in this case, for this financing, we're looking at pledging a portion of the value of the municipal center here. I believe, if I remember correctly, Teresa, that the municipal center has an insured value of somewhere over $8 million. And so, and Ashley can speak more to this, but essentially what we would be doing as the part of the collateral or as the collateral for the COPs would be carving out essentially a portion of the municipal center to pledge against those COPs essentially. And that's what investors are looking for and what's commonly done here in Colorado with these kinds of transactions. And that pledge, that collateral pledge will in no way impact your ability to use the municipal center as you're currently using it. And if you make all the payments as scheduled, as you would expect to do, that pledge, that collateral obligation goes away once the COPs are paid off. So a couple other points I wanted to make. Oh yeah, one thing we did do, Teresa, Devin, and I spoke a fair amount about, you've got this net cost of $3.3 million, right? And you've got some options. You could issue COPs for the full amount. You could use some cash and some COPs. You could also look at different repayment terms, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, out to maybe 20 years. And so there were lots of different combinations and considerations to think about in that regard. And after looking at a number of scenarios, the city is thinking that a 15-year COP for that full 3.3 million net cost is probably going to make the most sense for the city. That's, of course, your call as the decision makers. But as I pointed out in my memo, there are a few reasons to look at doing that. For one thing, a larger COP is going to be more cost effective and will get more interest from the market. And also by not using your cash permanently for these energy improvements, you then have that cash to apply towards other capital priorities, and you won't need to think about issuing COPs or debt potentially for other needs of the community. So we think that this approach makes sense for the net costs that you're looking at here. A couple of other points I'll just point out. We are looking at annual costs of about $325,000, $327,000 per year over the 15-year term. That's quite a bit less than what Teresa and Devin were initially anticipating with a larger COP issuance, in addition to using quite a bit of cash for these projects. And I should point out that you are looking at least $27,000 a year of energy savings that would be guaranteed as part of this project with ESG. And so really the net impact to the city's budget should be at or below $300,000 per year for the COP term. Then one last key consideration. The city in the past has issued debt and COPs via a negotiated offering, working directly with an underwriting firm. And this would be a different approach. Ellers, I should point out, is what's called a municipal advisor. We're not an underwriting firm or a bank. All we do is work with cities, towns, counties, other public entities as your fiduciary, essentially, giving advice that we think is in your best interest and then helping you get the best results based on what you want to do. And so after looking at this financing and our experience with similar COP transactions here in Colorado, we really think that this would be well suited to a competitive sale, which means that in the end of May, we would actually take bids on the city's behalf from underwriting firms all over the country, actually, probably mostly here in Colorado, but there's a lot of other underwriting firms that have Colorado investors as clients. And so we really believe that you'll get the best overall financing rate by opening this up to the overall bond market and seeing what the market can provide to you in terms of the best overall financing rate. So that's what we mean by a competitive on sale. What we'll do then is calculate all of the interest rates using a calculation called TIC, or true interest cost, and then present the best proposal for the city's consideration in what's called a pricing committee discussion later that day. So as part of this COP ordinance, you would be sort of pre-authorizing the issuance of these COPs within certain parameters. And then assuming that the bid results in late May come in within those parameters, that would give Devin in particular the ability to sign off on that winning bid. And then within a couple of weeks after that, you would receive the proceeds and could start paying invoices and reimbursing yourself for costs as well. So I've just thrown a lot at you. Before I turn it over to Ashley, can I answer any questions? I guess maybe one other thing I should point out, if we go to the next couple pages of the presentation, this page you see here on your screens is what's called the sources and uses of funds. So this just breaks down essentially what we're anticipating you issuing, which would be about $3.4 million of COPs. And then you can see the purposes. And the biggest one, of course, is the $3.3 million to the project construction fund. There are allowances for cost of issuance. That would be Eller's fee, QTech Rocks fee, Standard & Poor's, the credit rating agency that would provide a rating on these COPs would also get paid from that. And that's simply a placeholder at this point. And then underwriter's discount is sort of like points on a mortgage. It's essentially how the winning investment banking firm would receive some of its or most of its compensation for doing this transaction, buying the COPs from the city and then selling them to investors. So those are the components that make up the estimated COP amount of 3.4 million. And then on the next page is the estimated debt schedule. And I would just point out that these rates are higher than what we actually anticipate. We always try to be conservative, i.e. add a little bit of cushion to the estimates so that we're not providing overly optimistic estimates of what the payments would be. But you can see that we're estimating these interest rates ranging from 4% up to 4.8%. And again, the debt service or COP payments of about $327,000 per year. So with that, Mayor and Council, I would be happy to answer any initial questions.
Do you have a question? Can you tell us a little bit about the how the market conditions have been lately? I know you can't predict what it'll be at the end of May, but
Volatile, unpredictable. All kidding aside, actually things have been calming down in the last couple of weeks. Earlier this month, it was very unpredictable when the administration was announcing its pretty radical tariff policy. The financial markets really didn't know what to make of it in terms of either the bond market or the stock market. And so it was a very tough time to sell debt and COPs at that point. Things are still uncertain, of course, but are a lot calmer. And so we've seen rates kind of jumped during that uncertainty, and rates have been coming back down. But Mayor, I should point out that if as we get closer to the May sale date, if we enter another period of real instability, we would be the first ones to say, let's pump the brakes, let's wait. There's no urgency. May 28th, it's not a magical date. And we would look for a better time to sell the COPs. And if that instability were for some reason to sustain, we could look at other financing routes, including potentially actually negotiating directly with a bank again. We don't think you would get the best interest rates, all things being equal, but sometimes in situations that are really unstable, you do need to just go right to an investment bank and say, okay, let's get this deal done. So right now we feel good about doing the competitive sale, but we're keeping our eye on things and can pivot as needed.
So you don't feel like investors have really seen or kind of differentiated between municipal bonds and other investments?
No, they do, and I'm glad you mentioned that. The last month has been really unpredictable and hard to navigate in all sectors of the financial markets, but in general, there is more demand for municipal obligations than there is supply, because these COPs and bonds are always maturing, right? And there's always going to be investors, whether they're institutions or banks or retail investors, individuals that want to buy muni bonds.
Mhm.
And especially here in Colorado, there's just not enough new bonds being sold or COPs being sold to meet that demand, which causes interest rates to be lower than they otherwise would be,
Right.
which is really great
Mhm.
for issuers like the city. So I would say that dynamic is still there. It just got a little topsy-turvy earlier this month. Yeah.
Great. And then I don't know if this is going to be a question for you or for Ashley, but can you tell us more about the S&P rating and like when does that happen? and
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
impact?
So we would look to have a rating call with S&P analysts, and that would probably include both Devin and Teresa, sometime in the middle of May. And what's nice is they actually provide their questions ahead of time, so there's no gotcha, there's no needing to cram for every
Mhm.
possible question because you already know what they're going to ask about. And we at Ehlers do so many ratings that we kind of know anyways what they're going to be most interested in about the city. And so that's typically about an hour-long conversation.
Mhm.
And then within about a week after that, they would issue the proposed rating and rating report. We would get a chance to review that, make sure there aren't any factual errors or misunderstandings. And then that rating would get published ideally about 5 days or so before the sale. And that goes out to the overall market. So everyone that's potentially interested in bidding on the COPs knows what the city's rating would be.
Great. All right, I'm
Yeah.
aiming for an A+ or higher.
Absolutely. Yes.
Gotta have the best.
I don't remember what we got when we issued
Yeah, I
the
know they're not actually
bonds
A,
with
B, C,
driving
D.
change.
It's
Do you,
like,
Teresa, do
yeah.
you remember what our rating was on those? It was pretty
It
good.
was good, yeah.
Yeah.
It was good, and we actually got it bumped, I remember, but I do not remember off the top of my head.
I can't either remember exactly what it was.
And I'm not remembering either right now, but I'm looking it up as we speak. One thing I should note is that COPs are typically rated one notch lower than the GO rating.
Okay.
So what they might do is, well, what they would do is say, here's the rating we would assign to the city's general obligation debt. And we would say that the COP rating is just one notch lower.
Okay.
But those notches are small, right? So
Mhm.
you've got like AA plus, AA minus, then A
Mhm.
plus, A minus, and so on. So there's lots of gradations there.
And so does that reflect a perception that it's more risky debt
Yeah.
than a regular
Right.
bond? Mhm.
Because of that right of non-appropriation.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else questions right now?
I hope this isn't too silly a question, but what is under the yield statistics, and it says the average life is 9.421 years. What's that mean?
Great question. So what that means is that yield statistic looks at every single maturity of the COP offering and says, okay, how much is maturing, 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now. And it just sort of averages that. And basically, even though this is a 15-year offering in total, the halfway point, 50% of the COPs will be paid off after 9 years. And so that's also, Councilmember Whitaker, I should point out that we would propose that the COPs be callable right around the same point. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term, but that essentially means that you would have the ability after about 9 years to either prepay on the COPs or to refinance if interest rates were favorable, and you could then lower your interest costs for the remaining term of the COPs. So let's say 9 years from now, 2034, let's say rates are favorable. We could do a refinancing, and then for the last 6 years of the COP, you would have lower costs. Or you could say, hey, we let's say interest rates that you can earn money on the city's reserves are low at that point. You might say, let's apply some of the city's reserves to pay that off because that's a better investment than parking it in the bank. So it gives you total flexibility. And what's nice also is that this is a fixed rate financing until you decide it's not. So there's no resets, there's no ability for the investors to say we want a higher interest rate or anything like that. This, as of the financing date, is set until you decide either to refinance or pay off early.
Thank you.
So can you tell us what happens if a subsequent council decides they don't want to keep appropriating? Not that we're thinking about that. I just want to make sure everybody understands what
Yeah.
that means.
I'll
what the
give you
repercussions would be.
from my perspective, and then the lawyer can tell you
Okay.
more specifically. There's nothing that legally, there's nothing that anyone can do to stop you from doing that, because again, you have this sort of sacrosanct ability to not appropriate with COPs. That said, the market would, just speaking from the market perspective, the market would look very, very poorly on this and would go kind of nuclear in terms of S&P would downgrade you quite a bit, many notches down. And also you would probably have a hard time selling debt for some period of time if a future council did that. So totally your legal right, but there would be market ramifications.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll turn it over to you.
Fun ones to pick up on.
It's always good to hear the worst case scenario though, and make sure
Yeah.
we know.
No, absolutely. And as your bond counsel, it is our job at QTAC to
Mhm.
plan for the worst case scenario and then what is it? Shoot for the moon, end up on the star or something along those lines. So if that were to happen, an event of non-appropriation is not an event of default under your documents. So you technically have not defaulted
Mhm.
under your documents and it is well within your rights to do so. You have to have the right, as Bruce said, that right needs to be preserved. Otherwise, we violated Tabor and you would have otherwise needed voter approval to enter into this structure. And so it's completely, absolutely, and totally legal to do that. And it's within the discretion of future city councils to make that decision. As Bruce said, there's going to be some market consequences that have to happen. And that will naturally happen as a response to that, but you would not be under default under your documents. What would happen in that scenario is the city would give up the right to of possession of its second floor of the City Hall building, which is what we're currently looking at leasing under the lease, for the duration of the site lease. And it is probably a good time to talk to you about what your documents are. I know I sent you a very small novel worth of documents, and I apologize, Mary, that you spent so much of your weekend looking at it. That's
Normal
not
novel,
fun.
I don't.
Yeah. Not fun weekend reading at all. But let me go over the documents and then I'm going to circle back on that question and we'll talk about how it fits under. So the structure that we are using for your COP transaction is a lease back. The reason why that's important is because the fee interest in your building is never at risk. At most, you would lose the possessory right for the duration of the site lease. So the site lease is the instrument by which we give our trustee a leasehold interest in the lease property. So the city is going to lease pursuant to the site lease, and then the trustee is going to immediately turn around and lease the property back to the city pursuant to the lease purchase agreement. Both of those documents are entered into simultaneously. That's the order that we're going to record them because that's the order that makes sense. And then, so you'll maintain your fee interest in the building, and you will also maintain the right to possess and use the building as you currently are doing under the lease purchase agreement. Simultaneously with that, our trustee is our trustee because they're going to enter into an indenture of trust pursuant to which the COPs are going to be issued. That just gives the trustee all of the direction with respect to the payment obligations, all of the direction with respect to what to do in the case of an event of default, and their direction to act on behalf in the best interests of the certificate holders. So the indenture of trust is the trustee's document. The city is not a party to it, but it gives all the terms and all of the provisions with respect to the COPs themselves. So your COP is evidencing a right, basically what the investors are purchasing is a right to receive a percentage of the base rental payments that you're making under the lease. So they are buying some of your lease payments is what's happening, and we're certificating that with a COP.
Ashley, I hate to interrupt you. We have an interpreter that's trying to translate everything that
Oh, I'm
you're
sorry.
speaking.
I'm
So
sorry.
she's wondering if you could slow down a little bit and stretch your words just a bit.
Absolutely.
And if you could move your microphone down just a tiny bit. She's just trying to translate it all in Spanish and it takes a bit longer. So yes.
Sorry about that.
No,
I
thank you.
apologize. And would not be the first time I was told to slow down. So I apologize. We're gonna do that again. And if there's anything I need to repeat, please let me know. And we can.
Okay.
You got it. You got it. Absolutely. So those are the three main operative documents. They're going to be your site lease, your lease purchase agreement, and your indenture of trust. There are also documents that are necessary in order to sell your COPs. The first of which is the notice of sale, which, as Bruce said, this is going to be a competitive sale, which means we don't know who our underwriter is yet. But the notice of sale lets our interested parties who might want to purchase the COPs know that this is happening, know what time, know what the parameters are, so they can make an informed decision to bid on your COPs. They're going to make that decision based on the lengthiest document of all. That is our preliminary official statement. And that is basically the offering document that tells our investors all about the COPs themselves, the leased property, the documents that are involved, and of course, the city of Sheridan. So we package up all of that information and we hand it off to our investors under the POS, which is affectionately named. And then they can make an informed investment decision. Now, I'm going to circle back on your previous question because it impacts both the documents and there's also something in the POS that I wanted to mention. The city of Sheridan has previously in the mid-90s decided to walk away from a lease transaction that happened more than 30 years ago. You've not had any problems since then. And it was the direct result of a major retailer no longer being in the area, which had an impact on the city's finances. Because of that action, the city decided to not appropriate and then use its power of eminent domain to take the property back. And then there was a court settlement that happened thereafter. Everything happened the way that it needed to. The legalities worked out the way that it needed to. Because of that, there are disclosure considerations with respect to COP transactions. And so in our investment consideration section in the POS, we give a very brief description of that. We didn't want to focus in on that because, again, it's more than 3 decades ago and there hasn't been any issues since. And also your economy is more diversified at this point. So we don't consider it to be an issue at this point. But our POS is regulated by the SEC. And so that means that we have to play by their rules, and they say that you have to disclose everything. So the risk factor section that's in that document is basically allowing investors to know, we told you so. We give all of that information out, and then they make an informed investment decision. If you were to make a decision, if a future council were to make a
I'm
decision.
not gonna
No.
personally. I will wait
Sorry.
a few more months, so.
Gotcha, absolutely. In the, we call that an event of the water landing, right? Like no one expects the plane to go down and we end up in the water, but we have to
Right.
talk about where the life vests are. So in the event of a water landing and a future council were to decide not to appropriate, what would happen under, again, totally legal, totally fine. We'll work that out. The market will respond the way the market responds, but it's absolutely acceptable under your documents. BOKF, which is our trustee, I call him BOK. BOK would have a right to relet the property for the duration of the site lease. So what you're going to see in the documents is that the site lease has a slightly longer term than the lease itself. That is for that purpose, is that if they have to relet, we give them a bit of a cushion to allow them to relet to a different entity and recoup the costs that they lost since they no longer have the city making those lease payments under the lease purchase agreement. I want to stress again that you are never giving up the fee interest on the property, so you will get it back eventually. It's just for the duration of the site lease. If the city were to walk away, BOK gets to try their hand at reletting it to someone else. And that's how that would work out. From a practical standpoint, BOK would probably come back to the city and
Yeah.
try and work something out, and it would just be under a different structure. But they would have the right to occupy this space or to relet it to someone else for the duration of the site lease. Now, as Bruce said, when everything goes right and the plane lands the way that we wanted the plane to land, the site lease goes away at the same time that your payment obligations under the lease purchase agreement goes away. So either in the nature of making those payment obligations as they're currently scheduled, or if you were to do a call, as Bruce was saying earlier, it goes away when you do the redemption call. I'm gonna take a breath and just pause here and see if there are any particular questions on the documents, on any of the provisions. I do want to mention, I just lied to you. I said I was going to take a breath and then I kept talking. That's lawyers for you. Your ordinance in front of you is a parameters ordinance. So we don't want to have to come back and bug you again on the date of pricing, May 28th, or if it has to move around. Colorado law allows us to authorize this transaction by parameters, so that if the city council approves a ceiling for whatever that particular term is, as long as we are under that ceiling, we don't have to ask you to come together for an emergency meeting on May 28th to approve the actual final terms. So you're going to have a delegation, and here we have our city manager as the delegated party to confirm that the final numbers match, or excuse me, are under the parameters that are established by the ordinance. And that's why Bruce had mentioned that there's a bit of cushion that's built into those numbers. So we expect a $3.4 million principal amount. It says 3.5 million in the ordinance. That was the reason for that. Now I'm going to take a breath and see if there are any questions on any of the documents.
Well, you brought up the option at some point to call, but there are prepayment terms in the agreements, right? If we wanted to
So in
do
the,
that,
as
or
per-
payoff, I guess I should say payoff terms. Yeah, not prepayment. That was the wrong term.
No worries, no worries. So there is a date, there's a call
Mhm.
date, and we would need to hit that call date before it was callable. And anytime the obligations under the lease can be defeased, that's slightly different. It's basically where you would just bankroll the money and put it in an escrow account, and then you don't have to worry about making the June 1 and December 1 payments because it's
Okay.
already there. But the lease would have a particular date on which you could call, and that would be, I think we said about 10 years. Based on the, yeah. So what it would look like is anything 2035 and afterwards would be callable on 2030. What year are we in? 2034 or thereabouts. But it would be after that 10-year period that you could make the decision to buy out BOK's leasehold interest under the documents, and then you get your property back. Not that it ever will go away, but
Anybody else have questions right now during the breath?
Lance, maybe Devin,
Sure.
is there already a mortgage on this property?
No.
No.
Or paid
No.
off?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was what happened was when this first was built, and the city issued COP. So that was kind of what that whole scenario that we're talking about there. Long story short, the city went through a condemnation process. It went through courts, and there was offers and counter offers and did all that kind of stuff. The city ended up issuing some GO bonds. So they went to the voters and got voter approval to issue some GO debt, general obligation debt, and then made a purchase offer to the certificate, or to the trustee, basically through the trustee to the holders. And that was negotiated out, and they ended up buying it back. And that was for about 2 million, I think, at the time, according to Rogers' figures.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how that all happened.
One more question. Would the property is it gonna be worth a certain amount more after putting in this $3.5 million? Would it raise the overall worth of the property?
Oh, I think it'll raise the assessed value of the property for sure. With the level of improvements that we're looking at this, it will help on that. That doesn't do a whole lot for us. But to answer your question, yes, it's gonna, and as we've talked about also, the improvements that we're contemplating for this are necessary. What's going to happen is if we don't make these improvements, the building is going to continue to degrade and exponentially so.
And that does raise a good point. We don't want to over collateralize, or we would have another issue under Tabor. Tabor is the thing that keeps me up at night, but also the thing that keeps me employed. If we were to give the entire building away, there'd be too much collateral because your building is worth more than the principal amount that we're considering financing, which is why we're only taking the second floor portion, so that the city can make a reasonable determination that the rents that you're paying for it are reflective of the amount. It does take into consideration what the additional values that will come from this project, but our understanding is that that will also include other improvements to other city-owned property. And so we've reached a comfortable conclusion that you wouldn't be over collateralized by just taking that second portion. I know you didn't ask that question, but
Still very
it is why we aren't asking for your entire building, which hopefully is probably even better words for you to hear.
Why wouldn't we just pay cash? The city's got plenty of money, right?
Yeah, and it's something that we looked at as Bruce referred to, and for a few reasons. Right now with our fund balance, we are in a good position as far as that balance and how that relates to our annual expenditures. So we have a very good reserve in place. It's taken us a while to get there, but we have got to that point. We looked at that. We looked, as Bruce said, we looked at, do you cash finance? Do you do a little bit of both, or do you do all of it? And with the level of improvements and the amounts that we were talking about, it just made sense for me, financially and equitably, to do all of it, because the level of improvements that we're looking at making in the building are going to be around for the life of that debt. Right, so we're the roof, the solar windows are going to be here in 15 years and still be functioning. So it's when you issue debt, it's nice that your debt doesn't outlive your improvements, which it doesn't in this point. So that makes sense to me as well. It's equitable because then you have lots of times when governments issue debt, you got to ask your question: who's paying that debt? All right, if I have everybody pay, if we write a check today for this, all of today's people are paying that. Does that make sense? The people that move to the city in the future, they don't have to pay any of that. I mean, it's kind of theoretical, but but they're not going to have that debt hanging over their heads. Just the people that paid up to this point would. So you spread that debt out is an equitable solution of how you have everybody in your community, both present and future, pay for improvements that everybody can enjoy. Right. So there's that kind of theory behind it, as well as why maybe you don't do that. Third, and probably most importantly, what we look at is it frees up, and Bruce mentioned this, it frees up our current cash to really look at shorter term capital investments that we might want to make. And it really makes sense to cash finance those, or just, pay cash for things. This is going to be maybe some equipment that we would like to work with, some other things like that, other infrastructure improvements, things along those lines where it's not going to reach the level where we want to issue debt for it. But I want to have that kind of flexibility and that liquidity so we can bring that to you just in an annual budget appropriation rather than having to look at issue debt. So that's mostly why we looked at. We kind of, and the interest rates are favorable. We're getting decent rates, hopefully. And so it's a good price on that debt that we were looking at as well. So lots of reasons for looking at doing that. I'm just trying to think if there was something else on there, but I think I caught them all. Teresa, you remember our discussions about that. I think I got it all.
You said it all perfectly, Devin. So
No, not
I just don't even have anything to add.
That's scary. Did that answer your question, Jay?
Yeah.
Okay. Mostly many reasons, mostly really that flexibility, being able to keep that cash that we have right now on hand and spread that debt out a little.
Can you talk a little bit about what risks the city might be taking with this agreement and if they're mitigated in the contracts in some way?
Largely, the So the form of documents that we're using for this transaction are very, very similar documents that we use for every municipality in the state of Colorado. We've done a lot of work to work through all the Tabor considerations and all the legal considerations and review of the city's charter. I think that the documents probably are drafted more in favor to our issuers than they are to our trustee, which is perfectly fine in our book. The trustee is going to act on behalf of the certificate holders. That is their task under the indenture of trust. But with the exception of the practical consequences of walking away, in that you would be giving up the property for that duration of time. Largely, you're just going to operate the building as you're currently operating it for the duration of the lease. So the city is in charge of operation and maintenance expenses. The city is in charge of any kind of additional payments that are needed to continue to operate the building the way that you are. There are standard provisions in there that have to be in there, like BOK has to have a right to come inspect the property if they should ever need to. I can't imagine anyone be okay ever making an appearance. But just those types of provisions that are necessary in the nature of a lease transaction are in the documents. We've worked with BOK numerous times. They are a really great firm to work with. The Colorado representatives of BOK know this transaction in and out sideways. And they are very much aware of what they're stepping into. So largely, I would say that there aren't too many risks. This is a tried and insured structure in the state of Colorado, and you'll just continue operating as normally.
Okay. And how is BOK doing financially?
I've not heard anything to give any kind of concern. I know they're thriving right now. The rep for BOK actually was in our office on Friday, and they're busy and they're working through some some of the uncertainties that are reflected in the market right now. But I've not heard that they've had any kind of impact. We've seen some smaller banks that were in the news for reasons that you wouldn't want them to be in the news, and BOK is not on that list. So.
And Mayor, I would just add, if I could, if BOK ever decided to get out of the trustee business, not that we would expect they would, and correct me if I'm wrong, the trustee role could transfer to another firm like UMB or any number of other firms that provide corporate trust services. So you don't have to really worry about their strength, because they're playing a very defined role and somebody else can play that role if needed.
Okay. And what about the insurance provisions within these agreements? Who do those cover and what risks are they mitigating?
So it would be your basic casualty insurance. You'll have to carry, and it's for the value of the COPs themselves or any larger amount that you would already carry. Since the value of this property exceeds the principal amount of the principal amount of the COPs, whatever insurance you're currently carrying is probably going to be sufficient. But as a part of our pre-closing procedures, we take a look at that. BOK does need to be named as an additional insured on your certificates or your certificates of insurance. So we'll walk you through that process as a part of our preparations for closing. But it's going to be your standard casualty insurance. There's not a fidelity bond in this. There shouldn't be a fidelity bond in this particular one. But you have more property than you need. So it's easily gonna be what you're currently carrying. Title insurance is a requirement for this particular structure. We're more than likely not gonna need to cover the city's fee interest in this property because you've owned it for so long, and that's probably just an extra expense that the city doesn't need to carry for this particular transaction. But BOK's leasehold interest will need to be covered with a title policy. And we are currently speaking with Fidelity National Title on getting quotes for that, so we can show you what that expense is. But basically that just covers BOK's leasehold interest that's created pursuant to the site lease. The amount of that title insurance is going to be the final principal amount. So right now it's looking at $3.4 million. And we've asked them for premium quotes so we can tell you what that expense is going to be. But it's a one-time expense at the front end that's paid out of cost of issuance as Bruce was showing you that number in the sources and uses table. Title insurance comes out of there as well.
Mayor, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
if we look at the market, if we decide to push the sale date, what's our shelf life on everything we're doing tonight?
So that's a really great question. Your ordinance has under the statute that we're authorizing under, there's a 1-year authorization period. So it would be 1 year from second reading would
Okay.
be your shelf life.
Thank you.
Any other
Questions?
questions for me?
Everybody comfortable?
I do want to stress that these are draft documents.
Yeah.
We wanted to show you what you're approving or what you're considering for approval tonight. They will continue to be finalized when the final numbers are available. Again, we didn't want to have to bug you again after pricing. So there will be another turn of these documents, probably another 2 turns of these documents. I have some typos that I have to clean up in the POS. But what we're approving tonight is the substantial finalized forms of the documents. The substance will not change. It'll just be the final details and any kind of cleanup that needs to happen. So I say that to say that this is not your last bite of the apple. If you have any questions for me or my team, I think I can volunteer Bruce for that. We are more than happy to continue answering any questions as they arise.
And I think our hope is council will include some red lines next time so that you don't have to go through the whole thing again. You can just see kind of where things were updated.
We do love red lines.
Yeah.
And Mayor and Council, if I can just say one last thing. I think it's been really important that we talk about the leasehold interest in this building. But know that as soon as you sell these COPs and as long as this council and future council just makes those payments as scheduled, this will walk and talk for practical purposes, just like the city's geo bonds, right? There's not going to be any administrative or financial burden really to speak of or complexity. Devin and Teresa will budget for, and you will budget for based on their recommendations, all the debt and COP payments, and they'll just happen. So I want it, in my experience, it can be easy to sort of focus on, oh my gosh, we're pledging City Hall, but that's really a part of this transaction that once you do the transaction, you really don't have to think about. So.
And I'll add on to that, just going like, even in worst case scenarios, I don't hardly see a worst case scenario where we lose City Hall. There are Bruce mentioned, we go in and we talk to the banks and we look at a bank loan. There's things, I mean, that we're in the range, we could do that kind of a thing. It's just, we're going to get better rates, I think, by doing COPs and issuing that than we would go with a bank. But that's another option out there. So there's lots of options before we get to the place where we're booted out of City Hall.
I think it's good to keep in perspective too, how much, what do I want to say, how this relates to our annual budget.
Yeah.
I mean, our 327,000 is nothing.
Yeah,
in our annual
and
budget.
net in the budget's gonna be around 300K a year.
Yeah.
Net out. So that's gonna be something that's something you guys, we can, I mean, I don't say it's easy, but it's manageable. It's something that we can accommodate in our budget without any kind of sweat.
Well,
And Mayor, maybe if everybody, were you done, Ashley? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm all set.
Okay, good. Maybe we could address Roger's letter really quick,
Yeah,
because I think
please.
someone on council maybe had some questions about that. So Roger Rowlands, former mayor, supplied council with an email and a little brief history of the fiasco of the 90s with the city hall and all of those things that we kind of talked around a little bit here. And I appreciate Roger bringing that up because I think it asks questions that need to make sure that we're asking people that have a history with the city, remember those times, and they're going to want to make sure that we are being responsible agents of the city, that you are making responsible decisions for people and not putting their city hall at risk again. I think we covered a lot of those things that I hope was reassuring council on those kind of items, but there's a few other things I'll throw out here. And And really, I think we covered all of them, but I'm just looking kind of at my list. First and maybe foremost, our revenue base now as compared to the 90s is significantly larger and significantly more diversified. And that's a lot of what you see in the documents. You see that economic analysis, and it's looking at our revenue base and looking at those kind of things to make sure that we are positioned to where if we see failures out there, they're not anything that's going to be catastrophic like it was back then when you're going to lose some provider that provides 1/3 of your revenue. We just are not built that way anymore. So that is a much more reassuring place to be than the city was back then. We talked about we're looking at reasonable rates, reasonable term on this. We are looking at manageable payments, very simple, lots of options out, right? This is not like geo debt where, and I know Roger in his email said we don't want to hang this on the taxpayer's head. We are not. We are specifically not hanging this on the taxpayer's head. All right. They're not going to be left holding the bag on this. Let's see. We have a very healthy fund balance, as you guys don't know, and we all work towards that. Gives us a lot of options, a lot of flexibility. And it's unpredictable times right now, and we need to be careful out there. And if we weren't positioned as financially well as we are, I would maybe be a little bit more leery, but we're in a good position. We are financially sound, and I think this is a reasonable way to do this. Let's see. Think about, and I know Roger is where he's coming from on this. This sounds very familiar. $3.5 million COPs, which is exactly what they were talking about in 90 or 89 or whenever that was. Okay, well, $3.5 million then is like over $10 million now. So we're not even in the same kind of level of what we're talking about as far as the amount of debt that was issued compared to, where we are with, as far as any kind of a ratio where we are. Let me see if there was anything else that we didn't touch on with that. Gosh, I think that's really about it, but I'm happy to answer any questions that popped up into your heads. And again, thank you to Roger. If he's listening, I don't know if he's online or not. But if you see him, and I'll tell him thanks for sending that in, because those questions do need to be raised and asked, and I want you guys to feel comfortable about it.
Yeah, I think it's important people can answer questions in case there are those, long-lived community members who might remember what happened and see certificates of participation and go, oh no,
Right. Ooh. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And Devin, could
Yes.
I add? So talking about our revenue streams, and the difference in those. When we went through COVID, we were very much prepared to use fund balance. We knew, stores were closed, things were closed. During that year and a half, the city still had more revenue than expenses. So that shows you how stable your tax bases, your revenues are, that we're not just all on one, so we kind of went through the worst time when a lot of cities did have problems, did have layoffs, did have things like that, and the city didn't have that. And the other thing that's happening right now is that I'm hearing cities that have a lot of like federal funding and different things, they're really worried about how they're going to finance that. Are they going to have the federal funding? Are they going to, that they are concerned right now with those things. And the city doesn't, we don't have that issue. We have a very strong base, for our revenues, and we're very conservative on our expenses. So I think that was a test to how strong those revenues are that the city has and the businesses that we've established here.
Thanks, Teresa. Anybody have any more questions? We're right at the end of our meeting time, so. Okay, I guess, is there anything else on our agenda tonight that you wanted to talk about? This is the main thing, but.
This is really it, Mayor. Again, first reading tonight, mostly draft documents that you see in front of you. As Ashley said, you'll get another bite at the apple at second reading, but we'll update everything. We'll redline everything. Nothing really substantial will change. It's going to be filled out. The data will be there. We don't have right now. Yeah.
Great. Well, then, thank you both for joining us and answering all our questions. I really appreciate it and all your hard work putting those huge documents together. Yeah. And we'll adjourn this meeting at 6:58 PM.
That's your translator for keeping up with action.
I can't imagine. Oh, my gosh. Well, with any of it, really. I'll leave it up to you if you want. I feel like we got our
Council, do you
questions
have, we're just
answered.
gonna do, it's just gonna be first reading, where we won't be hearing any comments or testimony or anything like that. So it's gonna be introducing it, you guys vote on first
Yes, we're
reading,
just
set
scheduling.
the, basically go from that. So I don't think that we need either, it really anybody, it's just kind of, unless you guys feel you have more questions that we didn't.
No, I think it's
Okay.
good. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, let's start with a fresh introduction from Andrea.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea with the Community Language Cooperative. Thank you for having me today. We're going to practice language justice. We're going to have simultaneous interpretation in Zoom, in English, and in Spanish. Once we turn on the interpretation, please go to the globe that is going to come up at the bottom of your screen. And if you don't see the globe, go to the three little dots or where it says more and select your preferred language. Hola a todos, soy Andrea con la Community Language Cooperative. Vamos a practicar la justicia del lenguaje el día de hoy. Vamos a tener interpretación simultánea en inglés y en español. Y cuando aprendamos la interpretación, por favor, ve a la parte inferior de tu pantalla, selecciona el globo y elige tu idioma preferido. Si no ves el globo, ve a los tres punticos donde dice más y escoge tu idioma. And thank you, host. We can start interpretation now.
Thank you, Andrea. All right, I'll call to order this regular meeting of the Sheridan City Council for April 28th, 2025. Can we have roll call, please? Check in. All right, we have all members present. Can we rise for the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance?
Lord of wisdom, we pray that you will bless us with this meeting. Help us to have fun yet productive discussions that will broaden our perspective. Help us to take the various ideas presented and think of ways to flesh them out. If we do disagree, let it be on the content and not personality conflicts or power plays. Help us to resolve any disputes gracefully, be creative problem solvers, and have great team spirit. Please help us to find principles that we can all agree on and put these into action. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any updates to our agenda?
No changes to the agenda, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we'll receive and file the financial reports. I have a motion from Councilmember Camacho and a second from Councilmember Kelly. Are there any questions or discussion on the financial reports? Please cast your votes. That motion is approved unanimously. Next, we have our staff reports. City Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you're planning to attend CML, just make sure you get with me so we can get all of your classes and stuff registered for and make sure that you get into the sessions that you want. So that's all I have this evening and happy to answer questions.
I know you're not supposed to just be our party planner, but are we gonna arrange a dinner? Or should,
Yes, I can
or should I do that?
I can connect with you and Devin and figure out something.
Okay.
Yeah. Figure out what night you guys want to do it.
Yeah, I think there's a reception the Wednesday night, but then maybe Thursday.
I have to look at the calendar. I
Yeah.
haven't looked at that in a little while.
Not that we
Did you
can't
guys
do
like the
dinner
place we
same
went
night.
to last time in Breckenridge?
The pizza place?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could do, the Mexican place is good too, that Mi Casa, that's right
yeah.
down the hill there.
Mm.
That was good last time. Or not last time, but another time I went there, it was good.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll look at it.
Yeah.
Let you
Okay.
know.
Maybe we'll look at some choices and
Mhm.
see what you guys
Okay.
want.
Thanks. You just reminded me because I've been meaning to ask.
Food in Breckenridge is always good.
Yeah.
So
Okay, city attorney. No, not yet.
There.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. So obviously my first time here tonight, so thank you for having me. Again, Brandon Dittman from Wilson Fellman Dittman filling in for Betsy. Just a couple things I want to update you on. I had my first staff meeting this week, working on a number of projects, including the pretreatment ordinances for the utility that you guys do through the sand districts.
Mhm.
Also, Mayor, if you'd like me to, I can go over some of the state legislature.
Yeah, I had asked Brandon to tell us a little bit about what is it called? The Transparency and Fairness and Municipal
Fairness and
Government
transparency in municipal courts.
Bill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we had a request from CML to send a letter to the governor to veto it. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about what it is and get feedback from you all.
Of course. So the bill we're talking about is HB 25-1147, the Fairness and Transparency in Municipal Court Act. It has passed both houses at this point in time, so it's ready for the governor's signature. And as it was already previewed, CML is asking for veto support for this bill to be vetoed. And I'll go through some of the reasons, why that is. So, the intent behind this bill is primarily to align state and municipal courts in terms of their sentencing guidelines. That's, the stated intent behind this bill. Unfortunately, the bill does a number of things, which from a municipal perspective, we see as a bad thing, even though the intent was, it came from a good place. I think, the most obvious one that you can probably see is if we're required to do the same thing as the state courts, we lack a lot of flexibility on how we do our sentencing in municipal courts. And so things like rehabilitation programs, alternative sentencing, those sorts of things may be off the table in certain situations. Also if there's a crime of some kind that's a particular problem in Sheridan, one we've seen recently elsewhere at least is auto thefts and retail theft as well. You couldn't do, stricter punishments for those things that you're trying to really discourage from occurring. And so on the, the sentencing side, those are kind of the big concerns. Is really limits our flexibility. It takes away the ability to do some, non, jail time type, options out there for us, which is a bad thing in our perspective. The bill does a couple other things that have been less publicized as well, but also impactful for municipalities. One, it would require all municipal court sessions to be publicly available via broadcast.
Mhm.
And so if that's not already being done, that's a new expense for the city. For smaller jurisdictions, of course, they're not doing that. They're not even doing their city council meetings in most cases or their town board meetings. And so that's a whole nother process, that we have to spin up. And then the last thing it does is that for crimes which have a potential for jail time, we're required to give indignant defense, basically a public defender for the indignant individuals who do not have an attorney. And under this bill, we'd be required to pay those individuals hourly rather than at a set rate. And so it's my understanding that Sheridan currently pays a set rate for these individuals. We were required to go to an hourly model, so that could be more expensive in certain situations. Right now, we're given flexibility in that regard, and you're only required to pay hourly if you prosecute domestic violence in your courts, which most Colorado municipalities do not. And you guys don't, it sounds like. I think only a couple do that I'm aware of. And so again, more potential expense for Sheridan. And so CML has requested a veto. They have a nice form letter I'm looking at right now that goes through some of the reasons why they're requesting that veto. And I'm happy answering any questions on it. And I think the mayor may have a request afterwards.
Anybody have questions, or does that kind of explain what the bill is to you? Yeah, so if I don't hear any negative feedback, I'm going to go ahead and put in the veto request letter unless anyone has any concerns about that.
And Mayor, I'll just toss in I've had very brief discussions with our judge about this, nothing in too much detail, but she was extremely concerned about the loss of flexibility that she
Yeah.
would have as far as sentencing and other types of things along those lines. So
Yeah, that makes sense to me based on our discussions when we interviewed her about some of the special court programs she had done. Okay, great, thank you. I appreciate your feedback and thanks for the overview.
You're welcome.
Okay, city manager, what do you have for us?
not a lot tonight, Mayor. I was gone most of last week at the Colorado City and County Managers Conference up in Glenwood, and thank you for allowing me to go to that. That's probably, I think that's my favorite conference. I don't go to many. I go to that one. I go to CML maybe here and there. But I do enjoy that conference. Again, that conference is all primarily city managers, county managers, staff generally at maybe at department head level or so. But great sessions that are aimed right at us. And I went to actually quite a few that were on AI, so artificial intelligence, and how local governments are addressing AI, specifically here in Colorado. And so it's really interesting. Everybody is still at the beginning and trying to figure out, okay, what exactly is this going to look like, and how can we best utilize this as a tool that will work for our staff, will work for our citizens. A few cities are kind of out in front on this a little bit, and the rest of us are all kind of watching them and see what they do. There's a lot of vendors and consultants out there that are more than willing to help you get your AI stuff up and going. But really, I think one of the main messages I took back was not necessarily caution, but just do it in a very look at doing it in a considerate and structured way, and baby steps first, right? Learn to walk before you run with this stuff, and it's changing so fast. So one of the things that in kind of one of my to-dos that I took out of that is to look at a use policy. And I think that's something that we need to do here for Sheridan, is put a use policy. So how do we want to, or what do we want our considerations to be of the use of AI by staff, by council, by, any of those things like that, and start to put some guardrails out there and some direction for folks. I don't want people to not use it, but we need to maybe have some policies and start to put some policies in place that really spell out, okay, it's not appropriate for this, maybe at that time, something like that. So a lot of places are really, that's where I bet like 80-90% of the cities are right now, is trying to figure out that policy side of things and what does our use look like. And so we're going to look at that at our staff level and bring you guys something here in the not too distant future. But so it was a good conference. I appreciate you guys letting me go to that again. The only thing I had, Mayor, an update is that we're hosting mayors, managers, and commissioners this week here in Sheridan. So that's nice. And probably talk a little bit about what Tri-Cities has been doing on Homeless Policy Committee and the Ready to Work program and a few things like that. That's about it right now. Happy to answer any questions though that you guys have.
Great. Any questions? Okay, Chief.
Just want to update on a couple of things, some of the training that we're doing. So we recently had an issue where we had one of our residents that was having some mental issues that we were concerned about, that also had weapons. So there's the red flag, the ERPO, the extreme risk protection orders that are out there, but we hadn't really done much with that. So we did some training at a basic level for all of our street officers. We brought in an expert to make sure that they were versed in that and knew what to do. And then we have a detective that is getting more training on it so that we can have him follow through with that. So just to help protect our citizens and keep our city safe with that. And then another thing that we recently had was a hostage situation. And so we were able to, I want to give Commander Ledger a lot of credit on this because he was a hostage negotiator out in Denver before he came. But he used his connections, and we are sponsoring a hostage negotiations class. It's a 40-hour, basically the FBI class that they would put on. We have 2 of our officers, sergeants, that will be going through that. We're hosting that, and there's a waiting list. So we're hosting that on May 12th through the 16th. So again, doing our best to have our keep our residents safe. And then one thing that we're working on is we're working with Target, and we noticed some of their other locations had flock cameras. Flock cameras are these cameras, some of you may have heard of them, but what they are is they're cameras and they record information, and they really help with preventing crime or addressing crime. We have quite a few issues over at Target just from the retail theft and some of the things that happen, and some of the other Targets are working on this. So we had some conversations with them about getting flock cameras. It was something that they were considering, and so we are getting them. They're going to start them installing them probably in May. So we'll work with our city attorney's office, make sure that we have a correct use policy, that we protect the city. But it's going to be a new tool that we have at no cost to our city because Target's taking that on. So that's really good tool that we're going to be having. And then a little bit of bad news if you haven't heard, but Allie, our co-responder that has been doing an outstanding job. Good for her. She's moving on to be an ATF agent, so alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. She ended up loving law enforcement so much, and we tried to steal her to our side, but she ended up going through to ATF. She was accepted, and she's going to be starting there. So her last day is going to be May 1st. So we'll be losing her, but we are working with All Health to make sure that we have some other folks that are here until we can get our permanent person, because of course it's very important for us. One of the good things in this transition is that we're going to try out some weekend hours where mostly Allie has worked mostly during the week. So we're going to use some weekend hours and see if we get, a little more usage that way. So, but Allie will be leaving us. So a little bit of bad news for you.
Wow.
So
That's interesting. She had such a great experience with you all that she decided to go into law enforcement.
yeah, she really got interested, and we started talking to her about possibly, that we don't usually do sponsoring through the academy, but she was fantastic, and we were thinking, how can we make this work? But she decided she wanted to go the federal route. So
Wow.
so
Okay.
congratulations to
Yeah,
her.
that's
Big
great for
loss
her.
for us, but
Yeah.
we'll make sure we select someone good to keep those things going. And she set the bar extremely high so that we can make sure that we continue to do that. So
Great. All right. Thanks, Chief.
you're
Anybody have any
welcome.
questions before we move on? Okay, then we'll go on to the minutes of the regular city council meeting of April 14th, 2025. I have a motion from Councilmember Moreno and a second from Councilmember Stang. Any discussion on the minutes? Please cast your votes. That motion is approved unanimously. Next, we have the consent agenda. Authorized disbursements that have been or will be made from April 1st, 2025 to April 15th, 2025 in the amount of $466,948.81 per the referenced and attached transfer of funds. I have a motion from Councilmember Whitaker and a second from Councilmember Moreno. Any questions on the consent agenda? Please cast your votes. That motion is approved unanimously. We have items for individual consideration. We have an ordinance on first reading, Ordinance 8 of 2025, an ordinance of the City of Sheridan, Colorado, authorizing and approving a site lease and lease purchase. I'm having trouble talking all of a sudden. Lease purchase agreement between the city and BOKF-NA solely in its capacity as trustee, approving not to exceed $3,500,000 principal amount of certificates of participation, Series 2025, in connection therewith, authorizing officials of the city to take all action necessary to carry out the transactions contemplated hereby and related matters. I have a motion from Councilmember Whitaker and a second from Councilmember Kelly. Any discussion on Ordinance 8? Please cast your votes. That motion is approved unanimously. Next, we have Mayor's Choice. I have threatened to send you my fundraiser requests, and I will do it because I have the video up now. So look for that to come so that you can make a donation to Sheridan Celebrates that will go to help furnish the Bridge House Ready to Work facility. That's all I have. Council members, do you have anything you want to share? No? Okay, then we have time for public comment. If there's anyone who'd like to speak to council, you can indicate that to us, and we have 2 minutes per person, not to exceed 20 minutes total. Please, are you able to come to the podium? Is it? Great. Well, I guess that's even better. I should have done that to begin with. Sorry. All right, if you wouldn't mind starting with your name and address for the record, and then.
Yeah, my name is Clifford Harden. I live at 3730 South Federal Boulevard at the new Bonsai
Okay.
apartment complex. I am here today. I would like to voice some concern. I had a meeting today with Commander Ledger, Commander Conley,
Mhm.
and Chief Martinez. As he said earlier, we had a hostage situation that was pretty serious, and
Mhm.
SWAT had to be called in. And then we also had another one this week also with the same gentleman.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of stuff going on there. My concern is I just want to this is a new, beautiful community. And I want to nip this stuff in the bud real quick. Otherwise we're going to have some problems. It's a beautiful place. I'm happy to be back in Sheridan. I lived here 30 years ago, and I'm back now. And so want to work with Chief Martinez and everybody to see what we can do and how we can take care of this and hold management and ownership accountable.
Mhm.
So.
Okay. Thank you
Right.
very much for coming in. I appreciate your
Yeah.
comments. And I think, we all feel the same way, that we want our beautiful new development over there to stay the way
Yeah.
we want it, beautiful and safe for everybody. So go ahead.
Only if the gentleman is finished.
Oh.
Are you?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
For the most
Mhm.
part.
Okay, I just want to let council know, Chief and I have had some initial discussions on it, and I think I'll turn it over to the chief. You have something you kind of want to address on this what we've talked about.
Yes, we've of course all on the same page. We want to keep this facility shiny and new and a wonderful place to be. So Mr. Harden did come in today. We had already known about the issues that were there. So we'd already been working with Bonsai. We originally set up monthly meetings, where right now we're on weekly meetings because
Okay.
we're concerned what's going on there. It's primarily one residence causing some of that issue, but of course we've had some other issues that are there.
Mhm.
We are trying to get them to be make sure that they use their lease, because they have a very strong lease, a crime-free addendum or crime-free lease that we feel that they can use. But it's always, as Brandon would say, it's difficult, right? Because they're worried about getting sued if they move somebody out that they aren't supposed to, or all the different things that go through there. But they do have a very strong lease, and we have been encouraging them to take care of these issues right up front, right away. So we had, before Mr. Harden came in, we had already talked about having a public meeting there to get some of the community members, hear some of their concerns, but also we'd like to get the owners there, because we know as a city, you all did a great job in doing all you could to help that location come here. We want to make sure that the owners know that there are some issues, make sure that they're using whatever they can to help us with what we're trying to do. So again, not targeting anyone in specific, not trying to make anyone's life miserable. What we're trying to do is making sure that we keep that community safe and that we keep it, as Mr. Harden was saying, he wants to bring his grandchildren over there. And right now he's a little hesitant because this is happening right around the corner from him. So we are on top of that. We're doing all we can to work on that. I think it's important that we all know and we're all on the same page, because you all put too much work into this, and the city manager and everyone has done so much to make sure that this place came here. We don't want it to become a place that people don't want to go. And as Mr. Harden said, he's already hearing from some of the residents that they're not going to renew their lease. They don't want to because they think that these problems are just going to continue to be there. And we want to get on top of that, make sure that they feel comfortable and actually do the best that we
Yeah.
can about that. So.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us and welcome back to Sheridan. But yeah, I like your suggestion of getting in there with your officers so that all those residents know and feel comfortable with contacting you if anything comes up, you know?
And I think one of the things that we can look forward to here is a responsible response from the ownership.
Mhm.
Medici, they're not build it and run people. They're here.
Yeah.
And they have a track record of making sure that their developments are successful.
Mhm.
And you know, Troy, the CEO, he lives in one of the developments.
Mhm.
So they have a vested interest in these. They're not just build it and go people.
Mhm.
So I think that we do that. I think we also have seen, and I think some folks have spoken to this, is that when you have a new community, like a new development like this come in, and you have some people that come in there that are not used to how that community works
Mhm.
and don't understand the expectations, that
Mhm.
there can be a little bit of a settling out period, right? So it's new people, new management, they're all trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? And unfortunately, you get a handful of folks that are making it difficult for everybody there. That's what we'll focus on. That's what we'll make sure. And like the chief, we are, and I promise you, sir, we are on top of this,
Mhm.
making sure that this is a top priority for us.
Mhm.
And they've done a great job. so
Good.
far.
But please do not hesitate to let us know, because sometimes we don't know if people don't tell us.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you so much.
And
for
as I
being
said earlier today, Mr. Harden, we are glad that you're involved. We want you involved because we need your voice, and it's important that we do all we can to help you. So
Mhm.
we know those issues existed and we were going to work on it. But I know you talked to Sergeant Boren late last week after this issue. She brought it to our attention that she had talked to you. She didn't give us your contact info, but we were going to reach out to you. But you came in today and it worked great. But we want you to continue to work with us, put your trust in us, and we will do all we can to help you with this issue.
Anybody else who'd like to, yeah, you're good. Thank you. You can just stay there if you want.
Okay.
Anybody else who wants to speak to council tonight? To give the option. I don't see anyone else. Okay, then we'll adjourn this meeting and we're going to be going into our Sheridan Redevelopment Agency meeting. Time is 6:26 p.m. Thank you. Oh, sorry, 7:26. I don't know why I said 6. Wishful thinking. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. There's a handful.
Jinx.
Get the right packet open here. Okay, we're all ready to go. I'll call to order the Sheridan Redevelopment Agency meeting for Monday, April 28th, 2025. Can we have roll call, please? All members are present. Our first item is the approval of minutes. Minutes of the SRA regular meeting of March 24th, 2025. Have a motion from Board Member Kelly and a second from Board Member Moreno. Any questions? Are you having a technical issue? Okay. Any questions on the minutes? Please cast your votes. That motion is approved unanimously. Then we have the financial reports. Receive and file the financial reports. I have a motion from Board Member Stang and a second from Board Member Moreno. Any discussion on the financial reports? Please cast your votes. The motion is approved unanimously. We have the approval of disbursements, authorized disbursements for our April 2025 in the amount of $169,380.78 that have been made or will be made for expenses referenced below. Legal expenses, none. Other professional services, $9,743.96. City support services, $158,906. And other expenses, $739.82. I have a motion from Board Member Whitaker and a second from Board Member Stang. Any questions on the disbursements? Please cast your votes. That motion is approved unanimously. Now we have new business, the Pinnacle Report for February 2025.
All right, get it in your evening off with the best part. So,
Yes.
under the new retailers, pretty excited that Con Space is going to be taken over by Third Shot Pickleball. Andrew had saw the article and had passed that around, so don't have any time frames yet on that, but we will let you know as soon as we hear that. Pledge revenues continue to increase. You can see that our year-to-date figure, we are 4.37% higher. And then our audit, our poor auditor, the first week of our audit work, he got called into jury duty that lasted 2 weeks. And
Oh, no.
so I feel so sorry for him because he is
Oh.
just working like a mad person trying to get caught up. So tentatively, we have June 23rd, but we do have some flexibility because the audits don't have to be submitted to the state until July 31st. So
Okay.
I will be flexible. I know he's just working very hard, but he got a little behind on jury duty. So that's kind of where we're at. So I think the audit's going well, but I haven't heard anything yet. So we got everything submitted. So they are working hard on that. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Teresa,
Yes.
where the old Peerless Tire was, I see that they're doing construction on that building. Do you know, have you heard anything?
That is a Lucy Sky 2.0. So that is where that other dispensary will go.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Are they moving the license over to that location?
There was a license for Green Solutions Clearance Cannabis that was here on Federal. They had issues with the landlord and the leasing on it, so they didn't renew the lease there, and they sold the license to Lucy
Okay.
Sky. And so they will be opening a second location on Santa Fe.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anybody have any more questions for Teresa? No. All right, then that's it. We'll adjourn at 3. I'm just going to say it's 3 o'clock now. I don't know. 7:32 p.m. Thanks, everybody. Glad I could give you a laugh to end out here.